Our campus must be dry. IU.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Dry Campus Podcast. Today, you will be hearing from your usual co-hosts. My name is Ethan Dillman, and alongside me is my co-host Sai Balabatra Petruni. And this podcast will be geared towards the last IU basketball game, which was against Illinois, where your Hoosiers fell in Champaign 69-60 in a game where, again, we saw where we saw a collapse, quite frankly, in the last 4 minutes. So we will dive deep into that game. But also stay tuned for future podcasts coming up. Of course, we have the ever important Outback Bowl against Ole Miss, and so we will preview that game and give you our thoughts and our predictions on that bowl game. So expect that podcast coming soon, with the game being played on January 2nd at 12:30. And then we'll also have another podcast shortly after that one, following this upcoming Penn State game, which will be played on December 30th at 8:30 p.m. So going to this Illinois game, we knew it would be a tough game. Illinois has great players in Coburn and Ayo Dosunmu, and we had the lead for, it seemed like, a lot of part of the game, especially in the first half and even in the first part of the second half there. But again, we saw that collapse when the game, started to get down to the wire. Illinois started hitting their shots, especially Ayo, and IU didn't. So, Sai, what are your initial thoughts of the game? 69-60. Of course, you want that to be closer, and in a game where we could have won, quite frankly, and we let it slip away from us at the end.
Well, a couple of things, Ethan. I mean, number one, it just doesn't seem like this team has the physical stamina and endurance and mental endurance to kind of last the full 40 minutes. It seems like we play really, really well defensively and, have our opportunities offensively for the first half and, at least the better part of that second half. And then once that 8-minute mark comes up, when the going gets really tough and it's crunch time, we kind of fold. And the interesting thing is, it's not just offensively where we're having these big scoring droughts. We had at about 8 minutes, we had a scoring drought of a few minutes, and then in the last 4 minutes we struggled again. But it's defensively too. We get tired and we gave Illinois a lot of wide open looks. So it's really tough for me, because the biggest thing that I saw is the inability to make adjustments and the inability of knowing what to do during those crunch time moments. In the last 4 minutes, understanding where the ball should go, who should have the ball in their hands, and what kind of plays are we trying to make. We look like deers in headlights out there in the last few minutes, where, it's, passing along the perimeter, Al to Armand I don't think Rob was even in there at that point, but, it's like we don't know what to do with the ball and we don't have any set plays in those moments. And that comes down to Archie Miller. We've been talking about this for the 4 years that Archie's been here. And this has been a problem consistently, where we don't know what to do at the end of games. I mean, we look at Illinois. They have Ayo, who obviously is an outstanding player. But he's making plays. They look like they know what to do. Get the ball in Ayo's hands. Ayo will make a play, maybe get it to Kofi. It also, one of the other things I noticed in crunch time is, that's when Kofi Coburn is rebounding like crazy, getting those offensive boards. I mean, it felt like we were really able to stop him for the most of the game. But once crunch time hit, no one could get rebounds out of his hands. So it's tough when this team struggles so hard when it matters the most. If we can, it's starting to look like we can only win games if we build like a 15-point lead. If it's a tight game, I don't know if this team can really even win any of those games this year, because they really haven't proven to me that they can make the right types of plays at the end of games, and that comes down to poor coaching, making poor adjustments, and if adjustments are even being made. So, I mean, it is disappointing to see what's happened these last couple games.
Yeah, and you look at what are we 5-4 on the season, right? That Texas loss was bad. That was almost, we can throw that by the wayside. I don't think we're going to lose by that much. Hopefully not the rest of the season. You have the Florida State game, the Northwestern game, and now the Illinois game. All three were very similar types of games where it was close throughout. In the Northwestern game, we were down big in the first half, which was not the case during against Illinois or Florida State. But the 4-minute timeout in each of those games, we were within a possession, right? We were within at least two. I think we were down 4 against Northwestern. We were down, I believe, 3 against Illinois, and Florida State. I'm assuming we were, probably tied with Florida State. That was a very close game throughout. And we have gotten beat in those last 4 minutes or overtime every single time. And that, in my opinion, comes down to coaching. All right. Because if you have your players ready and prepared for those last 4 minutes, then your players are going to rise up to the occasion. One thing I noticed, I guess, from that was I don't see a true leader on this team. I would say Trace is our best player, but when it came down to those crunch time minutes, he wasn't getting the plays done. He also wasn't, being the vocal leader on the floor. Even and Armand was making the shots at the end, but again, he wasn't being that vocal leader. Rob isn't being that vocal leader. Al, who's a senior, who you would think could be that vocal leader, really wasn't. They were, like you said, deer in headlights, looking at each other to make the basket. Nobody themselves, maybe Armand did, but other than that, nobody themselves seemed to want to take the shots when it mattered. Race didn't want to. Al didn't want to. Rob didn't want to. Even I don't know if he even played during the last few minutes. But again, it's like we've had the same podcast before. We've seen these same games where we hang tight, and then we'll end up losing in the final minutes. In this game, we actually had less turnovers than Illinois. We only had 8 turnovers on the game, which you would think would be good. Where Illinois got us was rebounding. They heavily out-rebounded us, especially in the second half. That's when, like you said, Coburn was getting every rebound, near the basket. And it was the same case from the Florida State game, where we couldn't even get a rebound to save our life. I think the biggest stat of the game, quite frankly, and this was, interestingly enough, one of your keys to the game on the last podcast, was offensive rebounds. So sorry if I'm stealing your thunder here, but we had, and I'm looking at stats here, 2 offensive rebounds, one from Race and one from Al. All right. Illinois had 8, 4 of them coming from Coburn. Trace had 0 offensive rebounds. So anytime we put up a shot, there was not one time when Trace was able to get the rebound after a missed shot from us, which seems to happen a lot. You're not going to win games like that, especially when you're playing a team that has a solid center like Coburn, or in like Illinois in Coburn. I expected a better game from Trace. 3 of 13 from the field. That's not going to get it done. And his shots that he was missing, they were tough, but they were makeable. I mean, I don't know. I feel like Trace needs to know. Trace needs to know the moments that he's playing in. When you're going up against a Coburn, you need to be ready mentally and physically to play. And I don't think he was mentally and physically ready to play against that Illinois team. And that eventually hurt us enough to where he couldn't get the rebounds needed to expand our possessions and eventually win the game for us. And that was a big con that I saw from this game was Trace's play, inability to offensive rebound, inability to finish around the rim. And eventually I think Coburn was too much, quite frankly, for Trace.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Trace had a bad game, and I think that's a big reason why we lost this game is because our best player didn't do what he was supposed to do. He had 11 and 8. Coburn had 15 and 15. He got outplayed. And Trace is a guy that, has been touted as, one of the best big men in the country. He's been billed like that this year. When you're one of the best big men in the country, you have to show it against other great big men. The rebounding is one thing. I think that's a crucial area where we need to offensive rebound. We need to get a lot better at offensive rebounding. And Trace needs to be the one to lead that charge. But for me, 3 of 13 is tough, man. You got to be able to finish around the rim. There were a lot of good looks. I'll leave it at that. There were a ton of opportunities for him to score, and he was just flat out missing them. And that's been something that's not new. I wouldn't say that's new. He's done that in a couple games before. It's great if you can score 30 on North Alabama or Stanford or Providence or Tennessee Tech, but if you can do that against the Big Ten, that's the next step up. If you had games like this where you're scoring 10 points when you're the best player, you're supposed to be the best player on the team and maybe the best player on the floor. Io definitely has something to say about that, but then you got to show up. But the other thing that bothered me, and we talked about, struggling to, play tough in those crucial minutes. I want to go to the defensive side in those crucial minutes because, look, most of the game, I was pleased with our defense. I think we played a great defensive game for about 75% of that game. And then what happened? We got tired. We stopped moving. Io had most of his 30 points in the last few minutes of the game, it felt like. Because he had about 2 or 3 wide open threes where guys are not collapsing to the perimeter to guard him. They're giving him way too much space. This guy is the best guard in the Big Ten. You can absolutely not give him that much space. That is ridiculous. So, it showed by this. I know there's this quote that Io gave after the game, which pretty much says it all. He talked about how he pretty much read the defense easily. He knew that he even said that the defense was tough, but at the end of the game, watching a lot of film the week before, he knew that Indiana is going to tire down towards the end of the game, and there's going to be opportunities there, and he just broke it down. He broke down the defense. It was that easy, and I know you and I were talking about it before the show, and you were telling me that that's gotta, that's embarrassing for Archie, to have a single guy, a single player, just figure out your entire defense and break it apart. So that's embarrassing. Like offensively, we have our issues, but defense is supposed to be our bread and butter, and we can't play bad defense towards the end of basketball games. I will say, offensively on the other side of things, I do think you were talking earlier about how Trace wasn't playing well towards the end of the game and how Armand was kind of the guy stepping up. One thing I've noticed in these last 2 games against Northwestern and Illinois, both of those teams had a closer in both of those games. Chase Audige was making buckets left and right towards the end of that Northwestern game, which in hindsight doesn't look that bad now because Northwestern's 3-0 in the Big Ten, so they're shocking a lot of people. And then Illinois with Io, obviously. But we don't really have a guy like that. A guy who can close. And it's not that we can't have a guy like that. Obviously, Trace can make big buckets at the end of games. We know that. And Armaan has proven that he can do it yet. But who's willing to step up to the mantle and demand the ball? I haven't seen it yet, and I honestly think Armaan can be that guy because, Trace, as great as he is, he can't create his own shot. And a lot of times that's what you're going to need towards the end of games. When someone has to pass you the ball in order for you to make a play or make a bucket. But Armaan is going to be that guy who can create his own shot, who can get to the rim, but also have that outside perimeter range. So he's been one of the bright spots, but we're going to need more because, my God, none of the other guards can really step up to the plate there. And Trace, if he's looking like he did against Illinois, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this just comes down to confidence. Armaan, he's a guy that that I can see that he has confidence. He was what 8 of 12 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3. I mean, I don't even remember the last time IU has had anybody that consistent from the 3-point line. And you could see there were plays, especially kind of towards the end, that were designed for Armaan to get open for 3. The kind of the last 2 or so threes that he had at the end of the game, he was coming off of screens, or he was coming off of double screens, meaning there were plays designated for Armaan to hit the 3. I really do think that, especially in today's game, having a guard that you can go to is going to be more beneficial than having a big man that you can go to for buckets. And as good as Trace can be, we have now seen that he can shrink in the larger moments, not necessarily the larger moments, but the larger games, the games against Illinois, where you have a Coburn, where you have a Coburn as their center. But Illinois really had no answer for Armaan. And so I think going into the future, I would not mind at all if Archie, kind of gives Armaan the reins, or gives him the wheel and says, try and get us to victory here. That was the case with Yogi all of those years. He was always the guy. I remember it was Yogi's senior year when we had clinched the Big Ten. We were playing Iowa. We were like up 1 or 2, and he literally just waved everybody off, step back 3, made it, won us the Big Ten. Now, I'm not saying Armaan's going to be at that level, but I think he can be a guy going into the future where he can be our Io. Is he as good as Io DeSumo? No, but can I see Armaan hitting some clutch threes at the end of games? Yeah, he did. He already did it his freshman year against Notre Dame. We didn't really see it much the rest of of last year, but we're already seeing him develop to be possibly that guy for us, which is one of the few positive things that I think I can derive from this game. I also noticed another comment from Coach Miller, from Archie, where he said, "Yeah, I think I need to play Lander and Leal more." And it's like everybody is saying that again. Lander comes in for 6 minutes. He played 6 minutes. Of course, his stat line isn't great because he only played 6 minutes. And it's like, especially like I said on the last podcast, when you don't have a lot of those games against the Texas Tech or the Tennessee Tech, against the North Alabamas, these young guys need experience, right? And I'm very glad that Galloway is getting the experience, and I think he's earned his right to be a starter now. He's a great hustler. He can. I think he can be a little bit better at being. He can shoot more, quite frankly, he can drive more and take more shots. There's a couple times where he's seemingly had an open layup and he passed it back out for a 3 and it ended up being a turnover. He needs to develop a little bit more confidence, but he's a freshman and I can understand, all right, he's learning the game. He's getting up to speed with the college game. That's what makes me so frustrated with Al and Rob, who had better games against Northwestern, but still not good enough to beat a team like Illinois. There was a possession in the first half where Rob had the ball, literally dribbled it for 25 seconds, and it wasn't even necessarily his fault. The other guys were not moving to even get open, and then he drives, kicks it off his foot, and it's a turnover. And it's like, what are these possessions? Ball movement, passing, moving away from the ball, screen. There were times when it would just be a standstill, and it's like, am I going to shoot the ball? Are you going to shoot the ball? There's uncertainty. And as long as there's that passive mindset and that mindset of, I want another guy to make the shot, this team is going to have a losing record in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten this year is stacked. I don't even know who's good, who's not good. Apparently, Minnesota's now good. Maryland beat Wisconsin last night. Michigan State's 0-3. I have no idea what's happening in the Big Ten. But that when you have all this uncertainty, it means it is wide open. The winner of the Big Ten may have 7 losses. And so it's a conference that you can win games in because it's so chaotic. But it's also a conference where if you don't show up to play, you will get beat. And not showing up to play is having that passive mindset, having the mindset of, I want somebody else taking the shot. And as long as we're there mentally, and that's from the coach down, all right? And as much as these players may frustrate Archie, ultimately Archie's the guy that he leads the practices. He coaches the games. I can assure you that the football players at IU don't have that mindset with Tom Allen, because Tom Allen is not a passive guy. He's not a guy that's going to say, let somebody else make that play. All right. Archie maybe needs to take a couple notes on how Coach Allen coaches his football team, being authoritative, giving his guys confidence, giving them the confidence to say, hey, I can make this shot, because it's interesting when we don't hesitate for the 3-pointer, we make it nearly every time. Jerome Hunter, when he doesn't hesitate, he makes it. Same thing for Armand, same thing for Al. But when we start to think about it too much, that's when we start to turn the ball over. That's when we miss our shots. I think this is a talented team, but without the confidence, they're not going to go far.
No, I absolutely agree. And you're right. We haven't been a very confident team, and it's because of definitely Archie's leadership has something to do with it. In the time that Archie's been here, we've seen a very timid and unconfident group of guys. And, it doesn't help that our older guys and Rob and Al are probably the most scared guys on the team when they play. I mean, look at Rob Finney for a second. I want to know what the difference in plus minus for our team was when he was on the floor versus when he wasn't. Because we were playing great basketball, then we put Finney in, and then Illinois scores some points, and we have a little bit of an offensive drought. We take Finney out, we're scoring again, we're making stops again. We put Finney back in. It's a never-ending cycle. The offense gets dormant when Finney is in the game because he just dribbles. He dribbles and dribbles and dribbles and doesn't know who to find. It doesn't try to drive. Finney doesn't try to drive at all. I don't think I've seen him try to drive in a really long time. The other side of things, I don't think we're very good at setting screens. I don't think our screens are very effective. It seems like, Race or even Trace sometimes they just come up and stand there. They don't try to effectively plant their feet and try to make an impact make it really tough for a guard to get around them. They kind of just stand there just because they're supposed to stand there, and that's not really going to be effective in any possible way. You talked about the freshmen. We need to play the freshmen more. The freshmen don't play with fear. Galloway's already so confident in terms of making the right basketball play. He plays tough defense. He's gritty. He makes the right to pass it. He's a great passer. And he can shoot. He's not going to make it every time he gets it, but he'll make a decent amount of threes, more than some people on the team can say. So I love Trey Galloway. I love inserting him into the starting lineup. I think we looked a lot better just consistently throughout the game. Obviously we had those moments where we couldn't score, but we looked a lot better consistently, throughout the game. It wasn't like playing well these 3 minutes, playing bad these 4 minutes. It wasn't too up and down. It was consistent. I would love to see Lander more. I'd love to see a little bit more of Jordan Geronimo. He only played a few minutes there, but he hit a big three. He's got the size, but he's also got the shooting. He can shoot the ball, but he can also, get down low, get those rebounds, get those second chance opportunities and score the basketball inside. So I want to see more of him. Anthony Leal, it seems like maybe he's just not ready yet. Which is fine. Not all the freshmen have to play, but Christian Lander is he's a big time recruit, and especially when you have horrible guard play, what better time to insert him in than now? Cut Rob's minutes down a little bit, put Lander in, and see where things go. I mean, there's only one way to find out. Because this team is struggling. It seems like half the rotations that Archie's playing, half the players on the team that are actually getting minutes in these games are doing absolutely nothing for us. Whether it's Rob, whether it's Al from time to time. Jerome Hunter definitely seems like a complete non-factor this year. It seems like the team is Armand, Trace, and Race, and that's it. We don't have any contribution from these other guys. You look at the box score and you look at how we're playing. It's horrible. Outside those three guys, it seems like no one's doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing too, what I've seen on Twitter, it's like, well, yeah, all of the teams we've lost to, Texas, Northwestern, Illinois, and Florida State, they're all ranked. Texas is actually 8th in the nation. Illinois is going to be consistently ranked this year. It's like, and Northwestern's better than what we think. It's like, yeah, but also this is Archie's 4th year, where plenty of IU fans, and let's say 4 years ago, my freshman year, I would have been like, yeah, we should definitely be ranked by year 4 of the Archie era. And here's another point too. If you're going to argue, oh, all the teams we're losing to are just ranked teams, well, that's half the Big Ten. I mean, off the top of my head, you have Illinois, Northwestern, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Rutgers are all ranked. Minnesota now, probably with their wins, they'll exchange Minnesota for Michigan State. This is a Wisconsin, another one. If you keep on saying, oh, well, we'll just lose to the ranked teams, then where are your wins coming from? I mean, this is a conference this year, like I said earlier, that is so kind of chaotic, but also so good. And even we look at our next game here, Penn State, yeah, they're not ranked, but guess what? They were up 16-2 against Illinois at one point. They were tied at the half, and yes, Illinois pulled away in that game. But this is a Penn State team that has proven that they're not going to back down. They beat Virginia Tech by 20 earlier this year. They have some really nice players. And so like even teams like our next opponent, it's going to be it's going to be tough either way. And so again, having this confidence mindset, it's going to carry it's going to have to carry this team throughout, because the Big Ten this year, if we go 500, we're a March Madness team. If we go 10-10, it's just a matter of finding those 10 wins. And that's going to be very tough.
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy games in the Big Ten, and we've said that time and time again. And that's kind of been every year, but this year it's like there are really no bad teams. Maybe Nebraska is all I could think of, because this Penn State team is a Big Ten bottom feeder, if you will, but it's still a Big Ten team. This team is a team that can still beat us, especially the way we've been playing. This is the perfect opportunity for the Hoosiers to get back on track. This is the perfect game to say, hey, it's a team that's, it's not ridiculously good, but it's a tough team that's kind of on our level, talent-wise slightly below our level, in my opinion, that we should be able to go out there and get the win. I see a lot of similarities from this team to Northwestern a little bit, where there's a lot of balanced scoring from a few different guys. Their best player, Isaiah Brockington, averaging 15 points and 5 rebounds. He's playing pretty well. He's scored in the 20s in a couple of Big Ten games. And then they got Myron Jones, who's averaging 13 points a game. So they've got a couple other guys, above 10 points per game. So it's a balanced attack where you have different guys contributing each night, which is again something that we haven't been able to say. So this is a must-win game. I think that's I think that's fairly obvious. I will say their strength is in their guard play, which again is our weakness, like we talked about. But they don't really have a ton of size, from what I've noticed. I think they don't have a player who's kind of has been averaging. All their players are averaging under 6 rebounds, which kind of tells you something a little bit. I think we have 2 guys above that in Trace and Race. I think this is a game where they should be able to dominate. I think it's a disappointment if Trace has under 20 points and 8 rebounds. I think he should. I think this is a game where Trace has a 20-point double-double, and I don't think that's too much to ask for either. I think that's a reasonable request.
Yeah, we should definitely expect that from Trace in a game like this. And also, here's our next 5 games. Home Penn State, home Maryland, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, home Purdue. If you want to stay at least somewhat competitive in the Big Ten here, you have to win probably 4 of those 5 games, with the ideal loss coming in at Wisconsin, right? Though Maryland just went in and beat Wisconsin in Madison. So, because after that is when the gauntlet comes of Michigan State, Iowa, Michigan, etc., and Rutgers too. This game is extremely important. You don't want to fall to 0-3 in the Big Ten. It's like falling to 0-3 in the NFL, right? 0-2 is one thing, and you can recover. Falling to 0-3 in the NFL will almost ensure that you're out of the playoffs. Kind of the same thing here. Less so with March Madness, but more so with just staying competitive in the Big Ten. got to win these types of games. All right. Penn State, yeah, they're good. They competed with Illinois. Like I said earlier, beat Virginia Tech by 20. Um, but this is a game where both Trace and Race got, they need to get their feet back under them. We've been harping on Trace here against Illinois. Race also did not have a great game. He had some nice shots. He was somebody that was scared to shoot, and he played scared the whole game, especially when Trace was not on the floor. I think Trace ran into a bit of foul trouble in the first half there. Race just disappeared, and you could tell that he was quite frankly scared to play up against Coburn. So hopefully this is a game, in a Penn State opponent that is stronger at the guard position, where they can get their feet back under them and dominate the way that I know they can. And Race, he's somebody that's really developed his shot. He's kind of developed this nice hook shot, especially with the right hand, about anywhere from 5 to 10 feet where he can knock it down. And he just needs to keep on shooting. One thing too I noticed that has to get better when we play Penn State here is just communication on the floor. There were a few times where Trace had turned the ball over, but the reason he turned the ball over was because somebody was coming from behind him and they stole the ball. Now, does Trace need to have better court awareness? Sure, you can argue that. But also, when the guard is up top and can clearly see the in the last game, in last game's case, the Illinois guard going in and stealing, you got to communicate, be like, hey, guy coming up on you, or something, right? Defensively, I think we communicate fairly well. It's just a matter of execution at that point. You can't leave guys open from three. If we do that against Penn State, we're going to have a very hard time. Offensive communication, I feel like, has got to be better. When guys aren't moving, the guy with the ball has got to yell, hey, move here, screen here, whatever, whether it's the guy with the ball doing the communication or the guy off the ball doing the communication. Communication on the offensive end has been pretty much non-existent, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we struggled on the offensive end. But overall, games against teams like Penn State, these are must-win games in the whole scheme of things, of the Big Ten, because this is about as easy as it's going to get. A home game, yeah, I know it's not your normal home game, but it's still a home game. You don't have to travel against a very beatable team. Because if you want to make March Madness, which should be not just a goal of this team with as much talent as we have, but just an expectation, quite frankly, this is a must-win game, and so is the Maryland game after that on January 4th.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference between 0-3 and 1-2. 1-2, you got opportunity to go 500 in the next game. So, look, you hit the nail on the head. Race has been less than impressive, and I know he's not been a guy we've really talked about a whole lot the last few weeks. So we can talk about it a little bit now. But you're right. It seems like when Trace is out of the game, he's not putting his foot down and saying, hey, now I'm the big man here, and really taking that charge and taking that leadership role. But look, even when Trace is on the floor, I talked about this, last podcast or a couple podcasts ago. Teams are going to double Trace every single game, and you're going to see it a lot in the Penn State game, because they don't really have a guy like Kofi who can really match Trace's level. They don't have that big man who can do that. So that's going to lead to opportunities for Race, and Race has to make the most of it. I think Race had a great game in that Providence game. He had like 23 points or something like that. And that's well within his abilities. That's something he can do. I'm not going to say consistently every single game, but he can give you 15 points a game. and that is not out of the question. Um, and that just that comes down to wanting the ball, having the confidence to say, all right, hey, and again, communicating, saying, hey, these two guys are on Trace. Race is open and has those one-on-one opportunities to kind of get to the bucket and get him going. And again, that's the thing with Archie. If one thing is not working, and if the guy you're trying to get the ball to is not able to, get it done, find an opportunity for another guy and give him an opportunity and say, all right, Trace is getting doubled. Give it to Race. See what he can do. See what this guy can do. So I'm going to be there's going to be a few things I'm looking to see in this Penn State game. Number one, we need a dominant performance from Trace. That's the number one thing I see. Number two, I want coaching in those last 4 minutes has got to be better. I want to see Armand, really try and close things out. Or being able to get inside to Trace, but I want to see that closer mentality, that killer mentality from Armand Franklin really develop, because even if this is not the year, next year if Trace stays and Armand develops even more, you have a really great duo in those two, with the freshmen developed a little bit more as well, to kind of play big minutes, and I want to see something from our bench, something. Give me something, whether it's Rob, Jerome, whoever else they decide to play. We don't even play, we play very few guys, it seems like, as well. So I want to see Lander, and I want to see Jordan Geronimo a little bit more as well. But those two things, man, I need to see Trace have a dominant performance after that dud in the Illinois game, and I need to see something better from Archie Miller. Or I'm starting to becoming. I wasn't there yet, but I'm starting to join the get rid of Archie movement if this type of if these types of things continue.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation. Once we're kind of towards the end of January and things are still where they are, then we can start to have that. But I agree completely with all of your keys of the game. One I would like to add is, so each half is divided into, what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 4-minute segments, right? The last 4-minute segment of each half, we need to win both of those. We've actually been, either equaling the other team in the last 4 minutes of the first half, or, gaining an advantage. We did it against Butler. We did it against Northwestern. The last 4 minutes of each game has been bad. Northwestern lost. Illinois lost it. Florida State. Let's just say the last 4 minutes of that game was the overtime game. Overtime portion, lost it. Winning both, if we outscore Penn State in the last 4 minutes of the first half and the last 4 minutes of the second half, we're probably going to win this game. Okay, the 4 most important 4-minute sections is the first, the last part of the first half, the first part of the second half, and then the very end. And I know I just said the last part of each half, but if we dominate those 4, right? So the first part of each half and the last part of each half, we will win this game. Those are the most important sections. You can look at each one as kind of like a battle, and that's how Archie does it. Winning those will most likely win us the game. So that's a very important key. And we have had tendencies to not end well. We actually started well against Illinois, which was a little weird. We usually come out to a sluggish start and then kind of start to get going. So that's going to be very important. Like you said, Trace, I don't only expect him to do it. Like I'm fully, like, if I were a betting man, I would put money on Trace having a great game, because this is the type of game where he does dominate games against the bottom half of the Big Ten. I don't have, the actual stats, but I can almost guarantee you that his stats are drastically better against teams that are in the bottom half of the Big Ten, which is slightly concerning. But when those games come around, you kind of expect that from Trace. And like you said, Lander especially has to play more than 6 minutes. How Leal and Lander get pretty much the same amount of minutes when Lander has so far proven that he's been the better player, that's an issue. I want Lander to play. I mean, give him at least double-digit minutes. He can come in and be a backup point guard for a while, but the fact that he's only been playing, I think he only played 3 minutes against Northwestern, where he actually hit a three and played well, and then played 6 minutes against Illinois. I think that's way under. You got to get this guy some time to really get into his own. And like you said too, I do like Jordan Geronimo. He actually came in, and I like that he had a foul, but he made sure that Coburn did not make the potential dunk or layup. He made Coburn trying to earn it at the line, and Coburn has struggled at the line. So he can come in and give you like a spark like that, and he did come in and make a three. These freshmen like Lander and Geronimo and even Leal, they can provide you a spark, right? But if they provide you a spark and then you take them out, then they can't gain any momentum and they can't get into their rhythm, right? Basketball, it's a game of runs. It's about guys getting into their rhythms. You got to allow them to do that, especially in games like a Penn State, where Penn State's most likely not going to run away with this, when we are more talented than they are. So I expect I expect Lander and Geronimo to play more. I want us to win the most important segments of this game, and if we do that, and we don't need to be lights out from three. I don't think Armand's going to be 5 for 6 again, but if he can just be consistent, right? Don't turn the ball over that many times. There's going to be a couple here and there, but keep mind of the ball. I think this is a game we win. I know I've said that in the past here. I think it's close, though. I mean, Penn State's a team, like you said, they're going to be guard heavy. They're going to make some shots. But I do think we win this game by about 5 or 7. I'm going to go 70 to let's go in the middle there, 70 to 64. I think we'll be happy to play in Assembly Hall again, even though it's only in front of parents. Even the parents can bring more energy, quite frankly, or I think it's friends and family that are allowed there. So I think we'll be happy to be in Assembly Hall again. Again, no turnovers, make your free throws, which we actually did pretty well against Illinois. And I saw I think Trace only missed like 1 or 2. But make sure you're making free throws, hit your open shots. That was again an issue. I think Rob had an open 3. He had missed it against Illinois. I forgot somebody else too had a wide open 3 when it should have went in. It didn't. I think it was Galloway that did that. Got to hit your open shots, convert when you need to. And this is like I'm kind of doing full circle here, but Trace, this is a 2010 type of game for him. 20 points, 10 rebounds, with a few of those rebounds being offensive rebounds to get second chance points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit closer, just because of I think on paper we should win by like 10, but I think it's going to be 63-60. I think it's going to be a really tight game because of the mental block that we kind of put on ourselves to finish games strong. That is going to be the number one thing to look out for as these next few games of the season come on. How do we play in those last 4 minutes? So, yeah, that's how I think this will go. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about this game. It should be a fun one where, it's always, these games are always fun for about the first 35 minutes, and then they make you want to rip your brain out. But hopefully we can get that win, get into the winner's circle here in the Big Ten, and put one on the board, and move forward to Maryland, which is another winnable game as well. So this is a really important game to turn this season around. You don't want to lose the first 3 games of the Big Ten. That's no worse way to really start. But should be a good one tomorrow at 8:30 on the Big Ten Network. We'll be live tweeting that game as we always do. Once again, follow us on Twitter at PodDry. Follow us on Instagram at DryCampusPod. Get all the information you need about the Dry Campus community. And enjoy the game. Grab a flask, grab your friends, and have a great time.
So I know I will be in Bloomington for the game. Not at the game, but I will be, within the Bloomington city limits for the game. So maybe that extra that extra bit of luck may help if I'm there in Bloomington. Because I've been home in Fort Wayne here for both the Northwest and Illinois games we've lost. So maybe me going back there will help. Help this team gain just a little bit more confidence. Maybe they'll say, "Hey, Ethan's back in town. Let's play well now." Also smash the subscribe button. I know we don't have that many subscribers yet, but do that. And also go Colts. We need some help from other teams. So if you're let's see, Steelers, please win. Bills, please win. We need you guys' help.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather have the Colts make the playoffs than like the Dolphins, unless Fitzmagic plays, then I'd be of course, and I'd be all for it. But like you said, hit that subscribe button. I apologize, we haven't been that great about getting our content onto YouTube as we have on Spotify. There were a couple issues, uploading for a couple episodes. But we'll kind of put those all out at some point, for you to kind of look back on and see. But we will be doing a much better job of getting these episodes out, so you can hit that subscribe button and enjoy our beautiful faces as we move forward. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this is episode 14, Ethan, of the Dry Campus podcast, and we will be back with a couple more episodes this week. This is a 3 podcast week, so it's very exciting stuff. So we'll talk football in the next podcast. The Outback Bowl is coming up this Saturday, I believe, and then we'll have one more podcast for after this Penn State game. So a lot of good stuff coming your way. This is Ethan and Cy. We'd like to thank you so much for the support and tuning in for this podcast. And we'd like to wish you a great rest of your day, and Happy New Year. It's coming up, so it's a great time to be alive. Thank you guys so much.
Our campus must be